The Patriots exit their bye week and enter into perhaps their most important matchup to this point in the season as we enter NFL Week 15. Yes, Week 15 of the 2025 NFL season. The Patriots will be taking on their in-division rivals, the Buffalo Bills from Gillette Stadium, this Sunday at 1 o'clock. Thank you, everybody, for joining me on what is likely this final episode of The Monster in the Lighthouse here, at the very least for this semester. I'm your host, Ryan Goodwin, and hope you've enjoyed the ride. It's been a fun ride, certainly for me this semester. It's been a little bit up and down at times, but thankful that we're able to record now 9 episodes of this podcast. So anyway, let's get right into it. The Patriots, again, facing very likely their most important matchup of the season, certainly to this point, against the AFC East rival Buffalo Bills, who come in at 9-4. The Patriots, of course, coming off of their bye week finally, and coming in at 11-2. This matchup very important because with a win, the Patriots can win the AFC East for the first time in 6 seasons. It would be the Patriots' first AFC East win since 2019, which was also the final year that Tom Brady was at the helm of the Patriots at the quarterback position. So this would represent a huge step for the organization, especially after last season when they finished, I think, dead last in the AFC East, and obviously another back-to-back horrendous years in 23 and 24, both 4 wins each for those 2 seasons. So this would be quite the remarkable turnaround with a win. Of course, the Patriots will go to 12-2, and as we said, would lock up the division. So obviously, a playoff spot, their playoff seeding would not be determined, but they would, of course, by winning the division, clinch a playoff spot as well, officially. So it's very likely at this point anyway that they get in with 11 wins, even if they don't win the rest of their games. Obviously, that's a worst-case scenario, but very likely that happens anyway. But of course, winning the AFC East would be such a big step in the right direction for this organization. And again, doing it for the first time in 6 seasons would finally dethrone the Buffalo Bills, who have been on top of the AFC East every year since. There has not been another team to win it in that time frame. So much like we saw for all those years with Tom Brady, all those years of dominance of winning the AFC East, I mean, they won the AFC East every season from 2009 through 2019. In 2008, they, of course, did not win the AFC East, but that year also kind of had an asterisk next to it because Tom Brady got hurt in week 1 and missed the rest of the season. So, and even with that, with backup quarterback Matt Castle, the Patriots still managed to go 11-5. Of course, some crazy tiebreakers that year would lead them to actually missing the playoffs at 11-5, but they still managed to have a lot of success that year. And then the only other time in Tom Brady's tenure, well, at least as a starter, obviously 2000 he was still on the team, but was not the starter that year. But the only other time with Tom Brady as a starter that the Patriots missed the playoffs, or I guess you could say really the only year that with Tom Brady the Patriots missed the playoffs with him at the helm as starter, was 2002, the year after they, of course, beat the Rams to win their first Super Bowl. They went 9-7 that year and missed the playoffs. Also, I believe the New York Jets that year won the division in 2002. So, needless to say, the Patriots under Tom Brady had a long history of winning the AFC East. Essentially, they won it every year that he was the starting quarterback, with, of course, the exception of 2002 and 2008. But, of course, 2008, he wasn't really a starter because of his injury. So, really just 2002. That was the one year that the Patriots, with Tom Brady at quarterback, did not win the AFC East. So, hoping to start a new tradition. Hopefully, the Patriots can get the win at home and, again, keep rolling from what they were doing before the bye week. That's really a concern that I have, is just that obviously the Patriots have been dealing with injuries, but they still managed to beat the Giants good on Monday Night Football back on 9 days ago now as we record this. It's December 10th. They were able to beat the Bills, the Giants, still on Monday Night Football pretty handily. And even with those injuries, it didn't tend to matter. Although, of course, the Bills are a much better team than the Giants. And the Bills are also going to be out for some blood because the Patriots took them down. What was it? Back in week 5, the Patriots took them down in Buffalo on Sunday Night Football, 23-20. The Pats pulled off the upset. And the Patriots are, I believe, home underdogs in this game, although not by much. But the Bills are slightly favored to beat New England, despite the Patriots having the better record. Obviously, I don't mind that. I expect that because Buffalo, of course, has won the division every year since Tom Brady left the Patriots at the end of the 1920 season. So, it certainly makes sense that they still get the benefit of the doubt in this matchup. And I hope that the Patriots obviously can beat the Bills, can win the division, officially clinch a playoff spot in the process as well, and improve to 12 wins. I mean, that would be the Patriots, I think, winningest season. What were they in 2021? Were they 10-7? I can't remember. I think they were only 10-7 in 2021. I think. I mean, if I remember correctly. So that would be the winningest season for the Patriots since 2019 when they went 12-4. So if that's the case, I mean, that would be quite a development for New England. Obviously, we've seen the preview for next year. We don't know, of course, what week, but we've seen who the Patriots are going to play. It's going to be a significantly tougher schedule next year as far as the strength of the teams they're facing, at least heading into the year, the way it looks. So, next year, I probably would expect them to not maybe put up the numbers that they have this year. But nonetheless, it's still been a great accomplishment for them, and we'll see what they do whenever the offseason does come. Hopefully it's not for a while. Hopefully the Patriots are still going to be playing some games well into January. So, we'll see what happens there. But, it's been a fun ride. Hopefully the Patriots can pull off the win over the Bills on Sunday. And I think they will. I think it's going to be a very close game, but I think the Patriots are going to be able to pull out the win over Buffalo and also sweep them on the regular season to go to 2-0. And hopefully, get that 12th win, clinch the AFC East. I guess my score prediction is going to be, it's kind of a weird one. I'm going to say Patriots 33, Bills 27. I don't know why. I kind of just came up with those numbers in my head, but I feel like that's probably going to be around what the score is. I feel like it's going to be relatively high scoring. The Bills are definitely going to make some plays. It's going to be higher scoring than the first matchup, I think, but we will see what happens. And unfortunately, maybe just the fact that this meeting's in December and it's in Foxborough kind of gives me some hesitation and maybe some sour memories from 2021 when the Pats at the beginning of December on a Monday night went into Buffalo and got the win, albeit that was in a very funky weather game. It was very windy. There was effectively no field goals, and it was like 14-11, I think the Patriots won. So again, very, very funky game. The Patriots only threw the ball 3 times. That was the famous Mac Jones only throwing it 3 times game. But then the next 2 matchups that year, the Bills basically kicked the Patriots' teeth. They beat them, I think it was 33-21 in Foxborough. I was at that game. It was like the day after Christmas. And just the Patriots had no answer to stop Buffalo's offense. They had no answer to stop Stephon Diggs that day, who was on the Bills. And I believe Diggs had a couple touchdowns. I don't think the Patriots forced a punt in that game. And so pretty sour mood from that game. But you have to consider, obviously, 2 completely different quarterbacks. The Patriots had Mac Jones that day. And now the Patriots have a different number 10 in Drake May, who I think everybody knows is obviously a lot better of a quarterback than Mac Jones, even though Mac Jones, to his credit, and I'm happy for him in a lot of ways, has had a nice little resurgence this year with San Francisco. But anyway, it's that 2021, and So it's completely irrelevant. It's 2025, so just something that it reminds me of, I guess, is that. But I think the Patriots, I think the Patriots can pull off a tight game this weekend, and it's going to be important because then the next week they have the Ravens on the road on December 21st. That'll be a Sunday night game. It was originally supposed to be a 1 o'clock game that day, but it got flexed, I think, understandably, to a Sunday night time slot. And then after that, I guess we're just going to go through the rest of the regular season for the Patriots. They go to the Meadowlands, their final meeting with the Jets this season on December 28th. That'll be a 1 o'clock game at MetLife Stadium. And then to close out the year, still a TBD for the time, but Sunday, January 4th of 2026, the Patriots will host the Miami Dolphins to close out the 2025 regular season. And that's going to be an interesting one, too, because now all of a sudden the Dolphins, no pun intended, are 6-7 and have won a bunch of games in a row. They don't have Tyreek Hill. They haven't had him for most of this year. He got hurt earlier in the year. They did have him, of course, in week 2 in that meeting with the Patriots down in Miami, but they don't have Tyreek Hill anymore. But then again, I think you look at much like the Patriots, so I can't really harp on the Dolphins too much for not really playing anybody. But you look at who the Dolphins have faced in that stretch, and a lot of those teams are not very good. But again, you could say the same thing about the Patriots, so I'm not going to harp too much on them. They're playing the schedule that they were given, and that's that. But certainly hope the Patriots can beat Miami in that final game and sweep them on the regular season. And if the Patriots can beat Buffalo this weekend, I think you're really going to have, the division games can always be a little scary outside of this weekend too. 3 of your last 4 games are against the division, to be expected. You typically face a lot of division opponents late in the season. But I think, if the Patriots can pull off the win, dare I say the slight upset over the Bills this weekend, I think they're in pretty good shape to probably, very likely, have at most one loss in the final 3 weeks. I certainly think they can beat the Ravens. I think the Ravens have obviously not looked great, especially these last 2 weeks. That matchup a few weeks ago, I think, was looking a little bit more scary when the Ravens had won, I think, 5 in a row. They went from 1-5 to 6-5 ever since Lamar Jackson came back. And, they seem to have all the positive momentum, but that momentum for the Ravens has just gone, I think, for the moment, right out the window, because they laid an absolute egg in Baltimore on Thanksgiving night. They turned the ball over 3 times in the first half, and they lost that game 32-14 handily to the Bengals in Joe Burrow's return. And to credit the Bengals, I mean, they actually looked pretty good on Sunday, too, in Buffalo. They almost had that game, and arguably should have had that game against the Bills, but ended up falling just short in that one. So that effectively eliminates the Bengals officially from playoff contention. They were 4-8 coming in. They basically had to run the table to even have a shot at making the playoffs. But now the best that the Bengals can finish is 8-9. So effectively, their season is over. And of course, it was a year for them that was, decimated by injuries. Obviously, a big injury to Joe Burrow kept him sidelined for a lot of the year and definitely cost them. I think if the Bengals had Joe Burrow in that game against the Patriots, and if the Bengals had also Jamar Chase even in that game, if they had Joe Flacco being able to throw to Jamar Chase, I think that game might have been a little bit different, because the Bengals put up a good enough fight even without those guys. But yeah, I think obviously the injury to Burrow cost them, and Burrow has been a guy now that's definitely injury prone. So that's concerning, I think, for the future of the Cincinnati Bengals. And yeah, so definitely something they're going to have to watch out for. But back to my topic of the Ravens. The Ravens lost a bad one over on Thanksgiving night at home to Cincinnati. And then they lost this past Sunday in Pittsburgh to a Steelers team who really just looked horrible against the Buffalo Bills. Did not look impressive at all. That was back on last Sunday, November 30th, not this past week, but the week before. And they were leading at halftime, but I was thinking to myself, like, during that whole time, like, there's almost no chance that Pittsburgh could keep this up for the second half. I mean, what were they were leading like 7-3 at half. But the thing is like the Bills had just shot themselves in the foot. And Pittsburgh really has not a lot of offensive firepower. So I'm like, this has got to be, the Steelers have to have another half like they did in the first half. And like literally the second play, I think, from scrimmage of the second half, Aaron Rodgers gets strip sacked. He kind of re-aggravates that wrist, hand, finger injury, whatever he was dealing with, and he fumbles it. The Bills scoop it up for a score. It was 10-7, and from that moment on, you knew the Bills were just going to take over, and that's exactly what they did in the second half. They dominated Pittsburgh. So keep in mind, that was a very bad Pittsburgh team. I think a Pittsburgh team that is in need of change, that was in Baltimore that they beat the Ravens, and they beat them 27-22. Pittsburgh improved to 7-6. The Ravens fell to 6-7, and yeah, so just really a bad effort by the Ravens. And I think, definitely the trajectory of that matchup that the Ravens have with the Patriots. Obviously, it's getting flexed now to a Sunday night game, but I think that's that could be another win. That could be another win for the Patriots. I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it's going to be. But that could be. Who do the Ravens have this week? They go to Cincinnati, and honestly, that could be a challenging matchup because we've already seen, we saw what the Bengals did to them literally just a couple weeks ago on Thanksgiving night. That's the rematch of that game, but this time it's in Cincy. And honestly, I could see Cincinnati winning. Cincinnati has looked significantly better ever since Joe Burrow came back, and even though their playoff hopes are done basically at this point, I would not write it off for the Bengals to get a win in that game. I think that's a winnable game for them. I know they're 4-9, and I know Baltimore is 6-7, but again, it's at home. Burrow's going to have Chase. I think he's probably going to have Higgins as well. That's not going to be an easy game for Baltimore, and I would not be surprised if entering next week with that Sunday night game where the Patriots come in, the Ravens are 6-8. I would really not be surprised, and honestly going to be fighting for their very, very slim, if it's that, their very slim playoff hopes at that point. Because, I could see them losing to Cincinnati. Another team that is surprisingly, we're not really talking, we've kind of branched off from the Patriots now. We're just talking about kind of general the NFL. But another team that is very surprisingly, I think, on thin ice is the Kansas City Chiefs. They obviously lost on Sunday Night Football to the Houston Texans. The Texans have looked very good recently. I think they're on, a 5 or 6 game win streak, and they're now all of a sudden at 8-5. So now you have the Texans at 8-5. You have the Colts, who we'll talk about in just a minute, who are really in bad shape all of a sudden, who were 8-2 but have now dropped 3 in a row and very likely will probably drop another one this weekend. As we'll talk about in just another moment. But, yeah, all of a sudden Kansas City really needs to, I think, run the table to be able to make the playoffs. I think it's going to be very hard to make the playoffs at 9-8, which makes sense. It's basically a 500 record. Usually that's not good enough to qualify, and I don't think it will be, certainly in the AFC this year, to have a team get in at 9-8. So I think Kansas City basically has to run the table, and they still have a couple more tough matchups too. Who do the Chiefs have left? I know they have a couple tough ones left. They have the Chargers. They're hosting the Chargers this Sunday, and the Chargers, just coming off a Monday night win in overtime over the Eagles, are now 9-4. So the Chiefs, for certain now, are not going to win the AFC West, so they're not going to be able to get into the playoffs that way. And then they go to the Titans, which should be a win next Sunday. But then after that, they host the Denver Broncos, I believe, on that's on Christmas night, actually, December 25th at 8:15. They host Denver, but still, Denver has looked very good, defensive-minded team. And, so you got really, 2 of the 4 Chiefs games left are games that they certainly could lose. And one of those is this Sunday, December 14th, against the Chargers at home. Both of them are home, but again, I mean, the home field advantage does not seem to matter as much for Kansas City this year, as we just saw them get beat on Sunday night 20-10 by a dominant defensive performance by the Texans. So, again, this crazy to say, but the Chiefs in Patrick Mahomes' prime could miss the playoffs. And, yeah, their final weekend matchup is January 4th, Week 18. That's at the Raiders. That's a game that they should win. So, really, 2 of these last 4 they should win, but 2 of them are toss-ups. 2 of them are games that they really could win or they could lose, I think. So it's not, it's not really set in stone, certainly, that they're going to win these last 4, be able to run the table and be able to sneak in. But we'll see what happens, I suppose. And then the one last team, I think, in the AFC that I wanted to touch on that has really just been decimated all of a sudden is the Indianapolis Colts. This was a team that was kind of, along with the Patriots, I think, in the AFC, to start the year, was kind of the underdog story. They got all the way to 8-2, and all of a sudden, though, now have lost 3 games in a row and are sitting at 8-5, and things likely are going to get worse for them before they get better, because this Sunday they go to Seattle to take on the Seahawks on the road, and they're going to have former Notre Dame starting quarterback, a guy that I really like because I am a Notre Dame fan, and that's them in the college football playoff. That's a whole nother story this past weekend. But a guy that I really like personally, and it's Riley Leonard, is going to be getting the start for them because Daniel Jones suffered he was playing with, I believe, a torn ACL, but he aggravated it on Sunday and is now going to need surgery, so that's going to end his season. And the kind of magic run, I think, for the Colts is very likely over. Obviously, they've dropped 3 in a row, so they're certainly in a much worse spot than they were just a few weeks ago. They're now 8-5 instead of 8-2. But again, their schedule doesn't even lighten up these next few weeks because this Sunday they go to Seattle to take on one of the best defenses quietly in the league this year in the Seahawks, and a very good team as well, led by Sam Darnold at 10-3. And again, they're going to have Riley Leonard starting that game. They signed 44-year-old Phillip Rivers off the bench, off the couch. He came out of retirement to back up the Colts this Sunday because they have nobody else to really back him up. And Rivers was a member of the Colts just a few seasons ago, but he's been retired for 3 or 4 seasons now. So he's 44 years old. I just saw something too that he's older than, I think, 12 current NFL head coaches, which is insane. He's older than the Colts' current head coach, Shane Steichen. So very interesting there. That's going to be interesting to see how that works out. But it does sound like Riley Leonard will get the start for the Colts. On a personal level, I'm going to be rooting for him. I like the guy a lot. Obviously, I don't know him personally, but I like a lot of what he says. I like kind of how he is. He seems like a leader. So I hope he does well. I do. But I don't see things really getting any better for the Colts because then the next week, December 22nd, Monday night game, they host the San Francisco 49ers. So yeah, things don't really look up right now for the Colts. They get the 49ers, then they host the Jaguars who just beat them handily in Jacksonville over the weekend, 36-19. And then they go to the Texans. Yeah, so really, there's a possibility that the Colts could end the year on a 7-game losing streak and could honestly go from 8-2 to 8-9. There's a real possibility that could happen because you look at the final 4 teams they play. They go to the Seahawks, like I said, this weekend. Like I said, next Monday night, they host the Niners. That's going to be a tough game, especially without a starting quarterback. Then they host the Jaguars, who just beat them in on Sunday. And then they go to the Texans, who look really good now, to close out the regular season. So, yeah, the Colts are very likely, I think, at this point, going to miss the playoffs. I think their season is effectively over. I don't see any way that they beat the Seahawks on Sunday with Riley Leonard. And I don't see, honestly, any way really without Daniel Jones, crazy enough to say, that they win any of the next 3 after that either. I think they're probably going to end up closing out the year with 7 straight losses. And all of a sudden going from an 8-2 team and an underdog story with, I think, the best running back in the league currently that they still have, which is Jonathan Taylor. But they're just going to be, I think, too one-dimensional without a starting quarterback. And yeah, I think their season is effectively over. All right. Shifting our talk a little bit from football in these final few minutes of this podcast to baseball. The winter meetings began, and I think today is the final day of the winter meetings down in Florida. Of course, all 30 MLB teams meet with some of the free agents, and they meet with some of their representing agents as well. And sometimes what you see ends up happening is, as they call it, the hot stove. Players kind of end up moving around from, you see a lot of some prominent free agents get signed and end up going to different teams. But, we'll see if that happens with this current winter meetings because really nothing has happened. I mean, there have been some rumors that have been swirling. For example, with the Red Sox, Pete Alonso was set to meet with them, I believe, today. So we'll see how that conversation goes. The Red Sox are, of course, very interested in Pete Alonso. But if we've learned one thing from the past bunch of Red Sox off seasons, it's that they love to throw the word interest around and don't end up getting a lot of these deals actually done. Sometimes they say that they were inches away from getting this deal done, but then we find out they weren't actually that close, and the money that they threw out there was not actually that competitive compared to what other teams threw out there. So we'll see what actually happens with the Red Sox and with Pete Alonso. And there's some other, we talked about, I think, Johan Oviedo, that trade. But there was also kind of a quieter Red Sox trade that happened. And unfortunately, just makes the Chris Sale trade an absolute failure from a couple off seasons ago. The Red Sox, in late 2023, going into the 24 season, so the off season after the 23 season, it was, I think, December of that year, late December, right before the new year of 24. They traded Chris Sale to the Atlanta Braves for second baseman Vaughn Grissom. And at the time, I thought it was actually a pretty good deal, and I thought it was a deal that might actually work out pretty well for both teams. I thought, Vaughn Grissom was a promising young guy in the Braves organization. He hit his first career home run at Fenway Park back in August of 2022. And I believe it was in his MLB debut. Oh my gosh, and we just have an update. Pete Alonso is heading to the Baltimore Orioles, 5 years, $155 million. Wow. So cross off Pete Alonso. We have a live update on this show. He is going to the Baltimore Orioles. So, like I said, not to the Red Sox. Another team that I was worried might try to scoop him up was the New York Yankees. But Pete Alonso is headed to the Orioles. Wow, 5 years, $155 million. And he will be in the American League East, not on the Red Sox. And the Mets, in New York Post article, the Mets are crushed. Yeah. Ugh. Well, that certainly changes things. That certainly changes things for the Red Sox now at first base. I don't really know where else they go. Kyle Schwarber went back to the Phillies. He signed a 2-year deal to stay in Philadelphia. So there's like 2 first base candidates. I mean, Schwarber wasn't really a first base candidate, but there's one. The big one, obviously, is off the board. And that's a crusher for the Red Sox. Because where do you go now? Tristan Casas, you can't rely on Tristan Casas to be your first baseman. You have to find somebody else. I think Josh Naylor, didn't Josh Naylor already sign somewhere too? I think it's unfortunate, but I think it's too typical for the Red Sox to I think Josh Naylor, Yeah, Josh Naylor signed again with the Mariners to stay with the Mariners. So it's really unfortunate that the Red Sox. We'll find out what if they really threw out a competitive offer at Alonso, but clearly not competitive enough because the Orioles gave him 5 years and $155 million, and were able to land him. So we'll see what happens. That might honestly be the show for that might honestly be the end of this podcast for now. We'll see. We'll see where the Red Sox go. We'll obviously keep an eye on how the Patriots do this weekend. But thank you, everybody, for joining us this semester on the Monster in the Lighthouse podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure to have these episodes. Try to do them every week. It hasn't been every week, but thank you so much for keeping up. And hope you have a safe and happy holiday season. Merry Christmas. And thank you so much. We'll see about keeping this going. But for now, Ryan Goodwin signing off.